Erikson's psychosocial development. Basic principles of Erikson theory. Epigenetic principle. Idea that development progresses through a series of interrelated stages, and each stage has a critical period of development. The notion that personality develops in a predetermined order. The notion that personality develops in a predetermined order and builds upon each previous stage. Psychosocial crisis, turning points, conflicts between opposing psychological qualities. Erikson's psychosocial development, stages of psychosocial development. Trust versus mistrust, birth to 1 year. The first stage of Erikson's theory occurs from birth to 18 months and centers around the infant's basic needs being met by the parents and how this interaction leads to the child to believe either the world is safe and dependable or a scary place to be feared and mistrusted. The second stage, autonomy versus shame and doubt. And this is from 2 to 3 years old. This is the toddler stage. The second stage of psychosocial development. This stage occurs between the ages of 18 months to approximately 3 years. During this stage, children begin to assert their independence. If children are criticized, overly controlled, or not given the opportunity to assert themselves, they begin to feel inadequate in their ability to survive and may then become overly dependent upon others, lack self-esteem, and feel a sense of shame or doubt in their abilities. Third stage, initiative versus guilt, and this is between 4 to 5 years old. The third stage of Erikson's theory of psychosocial development occurs between the ages of 4 and 5. During this period, the primary feature involves the child regularly interacting with other children at school. Children begin to plan activities, explore, make up games, and initiate activities with others. If given this opportunity, children develop a sense of initiative and feel secure in their ability to lead others and make decisions. Conversely, if this tendency is squelched either through criticism or control, children develop a sense of guilt. The following stage is industry versus inferiority. This is Erikson's fourth psychosocial stage, which occurs between the ages of 5 and 12. The child now feels the need to win approval. This is about junior high school. Initiative versus guilt is your primary kindergarten, and so industry versus inferiority is your upper primary into junior high school. The child now feels the need to win approval by demonstrating specific competencies that are valued by society and begins to develop a sense of pride in their accomplishments. If children are encouraged and reinforced for their initiative, they begin to feel competent. If this initiative is not encouraged, then the child begins to doubt his own abilities and may not reach his or her potential. Helping students develop sense of industry, avoid grading on a curve. It creates feelings of inferiority because someone has to fail. Use approaches to instruction that are likely to promote learning, increase engagement, motivation, student-centered approaches. Review strategies that support these instructions. The following stage is identity versus role confusion, and this is from 12 to 18 years old. Erikson's fifth psychosocial stage, and it occurs during adolescence from about 12 to 18 years, young adult. During this stage, adolescents search for a sense of self, through an intense exploration of personal values, beliefs, and goals. This is a major stage of development where the child has to learn the roles he will occupy as an adult. Helping students formulate identity. A sense of industry is composed of three components: being comfortable in one's own body, future and idea of future path, and knowing you'll be recognized by significant others such as your parents, teachers, good friends. Psychosocial moratorium. Delay of a commitment to an occupation, which can be beneficial in formulating strong identity. Try out different things to develop self-knowledge. Adolescent identity statuses. This is James Marcia. Adolescent identity statuses. James Marcia. There are identity diffusion, foreclosure, moratorium, identity achievement, and cultural, ethnic, and historical factors. Oh, excuse me, there's four. Identity achievement is the last. First, identity diffusion. There is no crisis in identity diffusion. No commitment, little self-direction, impulsive, and low self-esteem because they do not know who they are. Foreclosure, again, there's no crisis. The commitment is already made. Closed-minded and accepts and endorses parental choices and values. For example, I'll do what they say, or I'll do what you say, not because I want to, but because you told me to do so. I want you to be a doctor, so you're going to go to college and be a doctor because that's what mommy said you're going to do, regardless of if you want to do it or not. That is foreclosure. Moratorium, there has been a crisis experienced. Moratorium, there has been a crisis experienced. Again, no commitment. Anxious, changes majors often, and often dissatisfied, jumping around in life or jumping around in school, jumping around from major to major, job to job, group to group. So that's a moratorium. A crisis has been experienced. And again, there's no commitment, very anxious, changes a lot. And the final stage, which is identity achievement. Again, a crisis has been experienced. However, a commitment has been made. There has been introspective. It's been a plan, a logical plan, and there's high self-esteem because I understand why I feel this way, for example, quote unquote. In identity achievement, you've gone through the other stages and you finally reached a point where you know who you are, you're comfortable in your own skin, and you know what you want to do. And that's why the commitment has been made. You're introspective, you've searched on the inside of yourself, and you've made plans, you've committed to them. And this is a very logical, thoughtful process. And now you have high self-esteem because you know who you are and you're proud of who you are. Again, I understand why I feel this way. That's identity achievement. There are cultural, ethnic, and historical factors. Foreclosure is a historical norm. We do typically what our parents tell us to do. That's a historical norm. Moratorium, popular between the 60s and the 70s, Vietnam War, and other social upheavals, different ways you could be, different movements. So the moratorium, again, it's that anxiety. There's all this dissatisfaction and jumping around from group to group, movement to movement, moratorium, lots of movement. Also, males tend to be pushed toward commitment, and women tend to be pushed more toward non-commitment. Then you have intimacy versus isolation, then we have generativity versus stagnation, and integrity versus despair. Now, there's been some criticism of Erikson's theory. based on personal and subjective interpretations, is better at describing psychosocial development than explaining how and why it occurs, active exploration of beliefs, relationships, careers, not a universal practice, and reflects the personality development of males more than females. So that was Erikson, psychosocial development. Now we're moving on to Piaget, cognitive development. Piaget deals more independently and with the physical environment. Cognitive organization. Organization is the tendency to systematize and combine processes into coherent general systems. So intellectual processes transform experiences into a form that the child can use in dealing with new situations. Intellectual processes seek a balance through the process of equilibration, a form of self-regulation that all individuals use to bring coherence and stability to their conception of the world. Again, cognitive organization is the tendency to systematize and combine processes into coherent general systems. And then with that comes adaptations, which is the tendency to adjust. Adaptations, a tendency to adjust to environment, fitting concept into reality to balance. And that's accomplished by two sub-processes, which are assimilation and accommodation. A child may adapt by either interpreting an experience so that it fits an existing scheme, which is assimilation, or change an existing scheme to incorporate the experience, accommodation. And accommodations are made slowly over repeated experiences. And then we have schemes, which are organized pattern of behavior or thought. These become the basis for understanding and adapting to the world in which they live, the organized pattern of behavior or thought. First 2 years or so, schemes are largely sensory and motor. Infants and toddlers learn about objects by putting them in their mouth, grasping them, and throwing them. And then we move into childhood. Schemes are cognitive but concrete. And then we move into adolescence, where schemes become more internal and abstract. Schemes develop through peer interaction. Then we move into equilibration, which is the tendency to organize schemes to allow better understanding of experiences. Intellectual processes seek a balance through the process of equilibration, which is a form of self-regulation that all individuals use to bring coherence and stability to their conception of the world. For equilibration to occur, disequilibrium must also have occurred. Disequilibrium, it's a perceived discrepancy between an existing scheme and something new. Disequilibrium can occur spontaneously within an individual through maturation and experience, or it can be stimulated by someone else. And then we have constructivism, which is a process of creating knowledge to solve a problem and eliminate a disequilibrium. And that's referred to by the Piaget, Piaget's his constructivism. So then we have the 4 stages. The first one is sensory motor, and that takes place from birth to 2 years old. Object permanence occurs between the 4th and 8th month. As object permanence develops, children's intentional search behaviors become increasingly apparent. Develop schemes primarily through a sense and motor activities. Recognizes permanence in objects not seen. Sensory motor. And then there's pre-operational, and this is preschool and primary grades from 2 to 7 years old. So then there's egocentrism. It means that the youngsters find it difficult, if not impossible, to take another person's point of view. Conservation, those that test their ability to recognize that certain properties stay the same despite the change in appearance or position. Matter is neither created nor destroyed, but simply changes shape or form or position. And then there's the perceptual centration, which is the strong tendency to focus attention on only one characteristic of an object or aspect of a problem or event at a time. That's pre-operational, very centered, narrow-minded. And then there's concrete operational, which occurs from 7 years to 11 years old. The nature of the concrete operational stage can be illustrated by the child's mastery of different kinds of conservation. Children in the concrete operational stage are often more capable of learning advanced concepts than most people realize. Adolescent egocentrism occurs when high school students use their emerging formal operational capabilities to think about themselves and the thinking of others, why they can't discriminate between the way the world should be and the way it actually is. The child is egocentric in the sense that he is unable to take another person's point of view. The adolescent, on the other hand, takes the other person's point of view to an extreme degree. And lastly, then there's formal operational, and this takes place in middle and high school and above. So this is from 11 years and older, and able to deal with metaphors, abstractions, form hypotheses, solve problems systematically, engage in mental manipulations. The term formal reflects the ability to respond to the form of a problem rather than its content and to form hypotheses. Students who are within Piaget's formal operational stage of cognitive development are capable of solving problems by systematically using abstract symbols to represent real objects. A significant aspect of formal thought is that it causes the adolescent to concentrate more on possibilities than on realities. Inability to differentiate between the world as the adolescent thinks it should be and the world as it actually is, which is adolescent egocentrism. The child is egocentric in the sense that he is unable to take another person's point of view. The adolescent, on the other hand, takes the other person's point of view to an extreme degree. The criticism of Piaget's theory of cognitive development is that it's underestimating children's capabilities, overestimating adolescents' capabilities, vague explanations of cognizant growth, and there are cultural differences that should be considered. And now Vygotsky, cognitive development. Vygotsky deals more with people and culture. How one's culture affects cognitive development. How one thinks and solves problems is influenced by the contemporary and historical forces of one's culture. A culture's psychological tools, various cognitive devices and procedures, ways of doing things, aid and change one's thought process. How social interaction affects cognitive development. Cognitive development aided more by interacting with more intellectually advanced peers, older children and adults who can transmit more advanced psychological tools. How instruction affects cognitive development. Formal instruction replaces spontaneous concepts, empirical learning, with scientific concepts, theoretical learning. Instruction and the zone of proximal development. ZDP is the difference of what a child can do on their own and what they need assistance with. Scaffolding is used to support learning during early phases. As students become more capable of working independently, supports are withdrawn. Well-designed instruction should be aimed at slightly ahead of what a child already knows. Piaget, more strongly influenced by peers. That's what he believed about social interaction, that children are more strongly influenced by peers. Role instruction. Piaget believed that formal instruction does not have significant impact, whereas Vygotsky He believed, as in respects to social interaction, that more strongly influenced by those more intellectually advanced. The role of instruction, according to Vygotsky, is instruction, important zone of proximal development. Piaget, technology applied. He believed in micro worlds and also micro computer-based laboratory. He believed in collaboration with other students via the internet, learning independently and spontaneously. Whereas Vygotsky, on the other hand, believed cognitive apprenticeship with technology, such as telementoring or interaction with peers as well as experts on the web, multi-user virtual using. Vygotsky believed learning to think by following a master, again, the zone ZDP. Piaget analysis of the moral judgment of the child. Moral realism, morality of constraint. Rules are sacred, unbreakable. Consequences determine all guilt, which is typical of 6-year-olds. Moral relativism, morality of cooperation, autonomous. Rules are flexible. Intent is important in determining guilt, typical of 12-year-olds. Now we're moving on to Kohlberg's description of moral development. Kohlberg. Moral reasoning develops through a fixed sequence of 6 stages that range from narrow, concrete, and self-centered to broad, abstract, and other-centered. Not behavior, but the reasoning that leads to specific behavior. Kohlberg's use of moral dilemmas. He expanded on Piaget's work of having people of different ages respond to different dilemmas. Kohlberg's 6 stages. Pre-conventional, which is stage 1 and 2. Pre-conventional, all about me. Pre-conventional. Punishment, obedience, orientation. Quote unquote, if I don't get caught, it's not wrong. Instrumental relativist orientation. If you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. It's only wrong if I don't get something for it. Pre-conventional, stage 1 and 2. Punishment, obedience, orientation. Conventional, normal, all about rules. All about rules, stage 3 and 4. Good boy, nice girl orientation. I do it because the rules say so. Going back to foreclosure. How to be good, how to be liked. Law and order orientation. What is laid down as law and order. Most people fall in a conventional stage. And then the 5th and 6th stage is post-conventional, which is all about others. Social contract orientation, about the golden rule, thinking about others first. And then there's the universal ethical principle orientation. Ultimate stage, such as civil rights and human rights, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, universal ethics says you are just as important as I am. So Kohlberg's 6 stages. Pre-conventional, stage 1 and 2. Conventional norm, stage 3 and 4. And then post-conventional, stage 5 and 6. Pre-conventional, all about me. Post-conventional norm, all about rules. Post-conventional, all about others. Criticisms to Kohlberg's theory. Sequence of stage may not be fixed. Context in which behavior occurs may determine level of response. Moral dilemmas are too removed from everyday social interactions. And theory does not adequately address micro-moral issues. Moral issues, issues concerning personal interactions in everyday situations, the really small issues. And then macro-moral issues, which are really broad, such as civil rights, free speech, women's movements, etc. And then these are 2 review questions from the cohort chapter 1 and 2. Which quality must a teacher possess to be successful in a classroom according to Selma Wasserman? Flexibility. Educational psychology states that the art of teaching involves a person's motives, beliefs, values, emotions, and flexibility. Which teaching strategy can help lead to internal motivation in students, demonstrating a love for teaching and learning?